I've had quite a few questions come in about the goal writing and SOAP note assignment. Guys, please bear with me. My throat is still not at 100%, so I am doing my best with talking. But with this assignment, you've got the short YouTube video that you need to watch by clicking the link that you see here that says YouTube video. So when you're writing your note, I want you to make sure you remember you're not doing an evaluation on this client. You're writing a SOAP note based on the information that you hear and see, as well as your professional judgment. So you're imagining that you're the OTA who's interviewing the client. And after watching the video, you're going to identify a problem area or occupation that you feel the client would have a problem with. Now, that's going to go above your goal. Please do not miss that because that's 5 points worth of your grade. So remember, excuse me, remember when you are doing your problem statement to be specific when identifying the skill and then only include one. Then it is acceptable for you to mention the diagnosis, but be sure that the diagnosis does not take up the concentration of the statement. So, in other words, you wouldn't say the client's suffering from depression. You might say the client has difficulty sleeping secondary to the depression. Then based on that problem statement, so whatever area of occupation or occupation that you choose as your problem statement, that would be what you write your long-term goal about. And you'll do that in COAST format. Then you will provide an occupation you believe the client needs to address. Be sure the activity you choose is something that you can do with the client. So, for example, you should not choose something like sleep for 6 hours at night because you will not be there at night to measure their ability to sleep for 6 hours. And when you're writing your long-term goal, this gives you some examples of what that COAST format is going to look like. So you're going to need to, again, think about an occupation that can be addressed in therapy. You're going to need to include an assistance level. You're going to need to include a specific condition and a time frame. So once you've done all that to establish your long-term goal, you're going to break down that goal into two smaller tasks that could be used as short-term goals, but you don't have to write two more short-term goals. You're just going to tell me two activities that you feel could go as building blocks to get you to the long-term goal. So for example, if you chose the sleep preparation routine, you might choose two tasks to include yoga and a toothbrushing activity, let's say, as part of their sleep prep routine. So another example here, if your long-term goal is for the client to pay her monthly bills, you could break down that activity into writing a check and balancing her checkbook. So once you've done that and you've established your long-term goal and your two short-term activities, then you're going to write a SOAP note based on those observations and goals. So you're going to use the materials that you've got on writing a SOAP note, and you want to make sure when you're writing it that the following elements are present. So number one, you want relevant quotes for the S section. One of the documents that you have to refer to says to stick to one quote. I am okay if you use more than one quote. However, I would caution you not to use more than two, and I would actually also recommend that you include context around those quotes. So when the client was asked how she feels about therapy today, client stated da 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 da, instead of just putting the quote there with no context surrounding it. And then you also want to make sure that the quotes that you do include are directly relevant. Then in the O section, you want to include your actual date, the credentials of the person who treated the client. So for you, that would be the credentials of OTAS, and then where the client was seen by the OT. You want to make sure you're specific with that one. Then in your O, you want to include observable, measurable information that does not have any quotes and does not have any assessments. So if you can't actually see it happening, then it is not appropriate for the O section. Then in the A section, you're going to have an opening sentence that restates the problem. You're going to have no new information in the A that you didn't already mention in the S and the O. You're going to have no quotes in your A section, and you are going to include a recommendation for further or no continued services, as well as a prognosis or potential statement. Now, one thing I want to say about a prognosis statement: good and excellent are great to use. Fair, poor, or guarded require an adjustment to the plan of care. Otherwise, that's going to cause an issue with payment when insurance sees that. The A section should also include your therapeutic interpretation of what you heard from the client and wrote in the S, and saw from the client and reported in the O. Then in the P section, you're going to include, are you going to continue or discontinue OT services? And I recommend that you use those exact words. And then you also need to include the frequency and duration of treatment, what the OT will address, and how you will address it. Your how you will address it should be a client-centered specific activity. And then a statement of collaboration on the plan of care between you as the OTAS and the OTR. Then you want to make sure you're including your signature line. That's part of your note, and that should contain your signature, your credentials, and the date of the treatment. So then the last portion of this you need to look at, with OT documentation, including SOAP notes. They often are used to document treatments, obviously, to file insurance. That's another obvious way of using a SOAP note. But they're also sometimes used for quality management and improvement, which those measures are utilized to ensure that the services provided for our clients remain excellent and where they're supposed to be. So this can be accomplished, the quality management and improvement can be accomplished through therapy outcomes, questionnaires, surveys, and even through OT documentation. So in Module 2 in your reading list, there is an Advancing the Value and Quality of OT article. And then there's also pages 25 through 27 in your documentation book. I want you to review that. And then below your signature on the SOAP note, be sure that you include a 3 to 5 sentence paragraph describing how the SOAP note can be used for quality management and improvement in a therapy department. Then I've provided some helpful hints here for you with doing the assignment. So the client is being seen by you in a conference room in the psych unit. So in the section where it asks for you to tell where you are, that's how specific you should be. Another thing that you should consider is that this client has been admitted into a psychiatric unit, which is a locked and restrictive unit. So the goals that you write need to be things that are achievable on this unit. So, for example, you're not going to write a goal for the client to be able to go to the grocery store, because you can't take the client out of the unit to go to the grocery store. And then, although the client in the video for this assignment has not been performing a certain activity, you can still utilize what you observe the client doing in the O section of the assignment. So if you see them fidget, if you see them unable to make eye contact or able to make eye contact, all of those things can go in the O section. And then if you have trouble with that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And again, as with all of your assignments, be sure you refer to the rubric to ensure that you include all the required elements. And then, just kind of as a side note, something that I'm going to start trying to do in all of my classes is remind you why we're doing this assignment. So it's important for you to be aware of what is included in a therapy goal and how to break down that goal in order to decide activities that can be used to meet the goal. So when you begin working as an OTA, and even when you're doing field work as an OTA student, you're going to have to look at a goal that's written by your supervising OT, and you're going to have to break that down and have an idea of what activities you can use to meet that goal. So this is really good practice for that. It's also important that you're able to write a SOAP note that's specific to the mental health setting, or to any setting actually, because no matter what type of documentation is used by the company that you will be working for, if you can write a SOAP note, you can pretty much write any kind of note. So that's the reason why we work on SOAP notes as much as we do. So that hopefully will give you a little bit of an idea of kind of where to head with this assignment. If you've already turned in your assignment and you realized, oh goodness, I missed something, you can resubmit it as long as I haven't already graded it and given you feedback back on it. So if you hear this video and your assignment has not yet been graded, you can fix the assignment as long as it's before Sunday at midnight when it's due. But again, that has to be before I grade it, since I'm grading it early this go around to give you guys early feedback. So if you, like, let's say if you realize you forgot your problem statement at the beginning of the assignment, go in and add in your problem statement and resubmit it, and then I'll grade that one as long as it hasn't already been graded. So hopefully this is helpful. If anybody has any other questions, please feel free to let me know.